Hi, my name is Steven Tronichek, and I'm with HorrOrigins.com. HorrOrigins is a website where you can find articles, reviews, and interviews. We also run our very own film festival and screenplay competition. Today, I'm talking with Jeremiah Lewis and Cameron Gallagher, the writer and director of the short film The Rickety Man, respectively. Thanks for being here, guys.
Thanks for having
Thank
us.
you. Hello.
Yeah. So let's jump right in. I like to start
Absolutely.
these interviews by asking what got you into the horror genre. So, what got you into the horror genre?
Jeremiah, you
Cameron?
take this one. Oh,
Okay.
you go, you go.
Gotcha. All right.
Politeness.
Well, the very, very simple answer is I grew up as a very sheltered child. I didn't have a TV growing up. And so I really had no exposure to horror other than like hearing other people like talk about, it, especially kids talking about, a horror movie that they saw, or like Tales from the Crypt was really kind of big when I was growing up. And I feel like, that's something that every kid is like really into. They're kind of interested in like the macabre and like death, and they're very curious about it, and I certainly was as well, but I just never had any exposure to it. And then I got to college, and I was on my own, and I mean, I was just able to explore horror, and I was just into it from that. I mean, I saw Nightmare on Elm Street, and Halloween, and it was just like love at first sight. So that's kind of how I got into it.
Excellent,
Oh, I
excellent.
love it. Well, I was one of those kids, Jeremiah, because I actually got into horror because my dad always loved horror movies, and my mom would never let us watch them, so we watched with my dad, which got us into trouble sometimes. But so I always watched horror with him, and I remember the first horror movie I ever saw, I was probably like way too young, was the original Friday the 13th, and it terrified me. And I remember being so scared, yet after I was like so intrigued by being so scared. And I remember from there, I would just like, anytime like we just watch a horror movie with my dad, and it was just like constant, like all the time. And we'd watch everything, like from the most terrible, like, like straight to VHS kind of movie. We were like, what is this? To, obviously the big ones. And so for me, it was always kind of this like curiosity. And then as I got older, I was probably like 14 or so. And Insidious was brand new. And I remember being like, something about this. I was like, something about the way it makes me feel and think. And I remember it was the first time I feel like I could see the filmmaking. And I remember from a filmmaking perspective, it really like threw me into, okay, I want to be a horror filmmaker. So that kind of got me into that. So
Yeah, there's some great stuff in Insidious. The way that he puts your eye somewhere else in the screen, and then just like something random pops up, and it's like, oh shit, that's
James
yeah.
Wan, he is a master of that kind of stuff. And I could talk about that all day long.
Yeah, I gotta say I was one of those little kids too. I remember lying like the scary stories books or whatever, and just imagining
Yes.
like that scarecrow guy, the Herald or whatever his name is,
Yeah.
coming and murdering me or something like that. But so let's go one step deeper here. The Rickety Man is gothic horror, which is a genre that I love, and there's like so many great gothic horror films coming out even today. With Women in Black, which is excellent, or Crimson Peak, which is just masterpiece. And I just wanted to ask, what drew you into specifically the gothic horror genre? Jeremiah first.
uh, I think that I really feel like as a writer, I'm drawn to things that have multiple meanings and depth. And I want something that has like it's going to impart something new to like me as a person, and any audience that is going to watch it. And so I feel like gothic horror is kind of like this mixture of fairy tale and fable. And it's always about like, it's centered on family. And I think family is like really important. It's really an interesting dynamic because it's like a self-contained kind of microcosm of all of us, right? And we all have family, and we all have like dysfunctional families to a certain degree. We all know somebody who has a dysfunctional family at least. And so I feel like it's a really ripe genre to explore like the human condition. And so for me as a writer, like I'm really drawn to just exploring those themes, finding out like what makes family tick, what pushes people over the edge, and what really scares people, because those are kind of primal things that really impact all of us. And at some point we have to kind of confront it, not just in like other people, but also within ourselves. And so again, it's like comes down to, as a writer, I'm really drawn to, how does this touch me as a person? How does this impact me as a person? And so I don't know, I love the darkness and the creepy sort of romanticism of it. Like Gothic horror has almost, it's like a really weird beauty to it at the same time as being kind of terrifying, and like it's this mixture of life and death, right? It's like the rotting sort of stones of an old castle, but then you've got this beautiful young woman or a young man who's at the, you know, the cusp of their youth, and they're like just figuring out life, and yet at the same time something is rotten in the state of Denmark. So I don't know, I just feel like there's some really cool symmetries going on within Gothic horror that really make it an interesting genre to write in, and then seeing it on screen, of course, is just like, I don't know, the icing on the cake for me. And seeing what Cameron did with Rickety Man was just so, I don't know, it was really exciting to see it come together. And yeah, so, but that's me and Gothic horror. So.
And Cameron, how did you get involved in the whole project?
Yeah, so I actually, funny enough, the Killer Shorts competition, which Jeremiah was a finalist in, I actually thought that it was a short film competition. So we had just finished our another short film, and a friend of mine who was one of the judges, he had posted about it on Instagram, and I was like, oh, cool, like we could submit our short film. So I went to the website and I was like, oh no, this is like a short screenplay competition. I was like, well, okay. But when I was reading through some of the log lines, I was like, wow, I was like, a lot of these like sound really cool. Like I would love to just read them. And honestly, it really was just for the idea of like, just for entertainment. Like I was like, I really want to like read some just interesting stuff from, you know, people that are, you know, all different types of people, different ideas, all that kind of stuff. And I remember reading The Rickety Man, and instantly I was like, something about this is just different. Like it, you know, it touched on dread and guilt, and it had such a tone to it, but it also had this like really interesting lore and the idea of the Rickety Man. And I was like, I want to know more about this as the, you know, the reader of the script. And I was like, that's a prime example of what a good project is. So, you know, I reached out to Jeremiah, and at first it was just kind of like a conversation of like, hey, you're a writer, I'm a director, I love the Rickety Man. It was just kind of this chat. And then it was funny because it was like, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks later, and it felt like we were all of a sudden like, are we in pre-production? like it was like we just like really like hit it off. We both talked about a lot of the tone, and a lot of things just really lined up. So it just felt like this sort of next step. And I was just like, oh, like, let me check and see, like, could we cast a kid? Could we find the locations? And then like a couple weeks later, it's like, we found the kids, we found the location, and we're like, okay, here we go. And, yeah. So like, it was definitely like a by mistake, but in the best way I could ever imagine.
I mean, that's how it happens often. You know, you're like, you write something or you get something out there and you're like, oh, okay, this is suddenly happening. All right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's actually, that's one thing I like to say to people, that, you know, it comes down to you obviously writing a good script, but then it comes down to like the right person at the right time, you know, the right pair of eyes really coming in and along and finding it and seeing it for what it really is, and or what it could be. Because, you know, not everyone is going to identify with the script that you wrote. I mean, no script is universally loved. So ultimately it comes down to, you know, syncing up with the right person. And Cameron and Zach, they just came along at the right time. And it was just like one of those, I don't know, I felt like we were speaking the same language. I don't know if you felt that,
absolutely.
but I was just like,
no, I
don't
did.
know, like, it's like, what is happening? Because this guy is so in tune with what I'm thinking and what I want for this piece. Is that how it's supposed to work? Because it seems like it's like going really smoothly, and I don't know why. So yeah, it was really like, and I think it comes down to, you know, us being, first of all, on the same page from a visual and tone and mood standpoint, but also like there's like a lack of ego on this project. It really kind of feels like it's everyone's project. It's not mine. It's not Cameron's. It's everyone's, and everyone kind of worked to really make it as awesome as they could. And I feel like that shows in the final work.
Yeah, I agree. I think that I think ego is one of the biggest things any filmmaker has to deal with, and it is so stupid and rough.
Well, and to me, I think the great part about that is the more collaborative you are, and then the more you don't have this egos, the more that you feel like you can have open conversations about the project, and like saying, okay, well, you know, what about this, or what about that, or you know, or the opposite. We come up with an idea and Jeremiah be like, I don't like that, or it doesn't really work. And it's like, I trust what he already knows, and we all trust each other. And I feel like as like a unit, and obviously as a cast and crew, like in the full process, having that like trust and no egos, everyone just like has fun. And it's like, guys, this is awesome. Like we're all living the life here doing this. Like,
yeah, making movies is fun. So
it is.
you're working with a large amount of production design, costume design, set design. I'm sure that this creates a lot of challenges, you know, both
Definitely.
pre-production and production. And I wanted to ask you about what those challenges were and how they affected the shoot. Definitely something that I did notice specifically is, you know, you're shooting a lot of handheld. You're shooting a lot of. Was it anamorphic lenses on this, or was it spherical? Okay.
No, it's spherical. We
Okay.
definitely played into that look though. We did shoot
Right, that
2:4 to
that
1, so
pretty
it definitely has it. Yeah,
that tighter look to kind of, I mean, whenever you're trying to do big production design on a small budget, that tighter look's
exactly.
definitely gonna, yeah,
You
yeah.
caught on. You caught it. Yeah. Oh yeah. No. Everything was very intentional. I mean, that was at least the idea. I mean, when Jeremiah and I first talked, the idea at first was like this is going to be the issue. It's going to be production design, and it's going to be wardrobe, and it's going to be location. And it was kind of from the get-go, it was always this idea, at least from production side, of how can we show or be so specific about what we're doing. And thankfully, Jeremiah's script was so specific in a lot of it, where it was like, okay, we know exactly what we need to show. And we have these very specific framing and ideas. And, you know, we did a lot of like storyboarding and shot listing. So, you know, right out of frame is not, it's modern, you know, like, I mean, the location, we
Right.
really lucked out on that. Like Summer Moore, our costume designer, did like an incredible job. So we had so much good talent around us that made it look so good. But yeah, it was definitely like, okay, let's just focus on what we can see and let the rest not worry about it. Because if we can be very efficient in our filmmaking, we can stretch that budget, because that, I mean, yeah, it really was the biggest, I don't want to say fear, but definitely the biggest challenge for us. And, you know, like I said, we had an amazing crew that just did incredible stuff. I mean, Summer with the costumes, like one thing we did was we tried to limit the amount of costumes, and she found these like incredible costumes. I think they were in Texas. And it was just like so wonderful. And it just, you know, it sells every piece of it. A lot of the decor in the house was actually like of period. Like we found out the painting above his desk is like some priceless portrait. I wish I remember off the top of my head who it was, but it was somebody's like friends, like some famous artist. They painted it for their friend. It was insane. So we really lucked out on that. But I think that goes into being very efficient in pre-production, making sure you're getting the right places, the right look, the right costumes, because especially in a period piece, if you mess that up, unfortunately, you've kind of messed the whole thing up.
Yeah, and as actually speaking to that, you know, there were a couple of times where Cameron would send me ideas for costumes, and I would be like, that's not quite right. That's like maybe a decade or two off, because I'm familiar enough with the time period. I did a lot of research when I was writing it and trying to figure out.
Jeremiah had like a booklet of everything. Like this is the period. Like this is how everything's going. And it was like so great because we could just send it to the costume director, like, hey, listen.
Yeah. I mean, but at the same time, I do think that there is some value in being flexible, especially knowing that you're on a budget. So, you know, on smaller things, on little things that I just felt like, you know, you guys did a great job of balancing like the verisimilitude with like, okay, we have to make sure that we get this done. And there's only one way to do this within our budget. So it's going to have to, you know, we have to make some compromises. But I think that the end result is kind of this aggregate idea of like realism and a sense of place and time that you're there. And so I think that they did a great job of finding that balance and doing it all with, I mean, we had a good sized budget for the short, but it's still not a ton of money. So, you know, you have to make it, you got to make it work.
It's never enough money. It's never
No.
enough.
Yeah. I mean, that was the biggest surprise for us is, you know, you come in with a budget and you're like, oh, we're fine. And there's actually, I was just doing a bunch of behind the scenes editing, and I made a comment about how I was like, our total budget was like $26,000. It's on IMDb. It's not like a secret or anything like that. And I say in the meeting, I'm like, I think we could do it for $7,000. and I just laugh looking back at it. I'm like, wow, I had no idea what we're getting into.
Well, I mean,
great.
something that you know, you guys keep bringing up is this collaborative nature of this, and like, I mean, I agree that it's really about surrounding yourself with people who know much better than you about this
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Better costume designers, production designers, or so. And even the writer who knows way too much about the period. So, as you know, I do a bit of writing and directing myself, and I love set stories because sets are crazy, tumultuous affairs that, you're on set, you're stressed out, you're having a good time, you're stressed out and having a good time. But I wanted to ask about great set stories from the Rickety Man because there's a lot of good production design and the vibe's good. So I just I want to know how that was.
Spill the
I mean, there's a
beans.
ton. I would say it was like there was a ton of great stuff. I mean, it was a really like the cast and crew was everyone's so funny. Like in between takes, everyone's laughing, everyone's having a great time, everyone's like joking around. I think my favorite story though, and it's like it's just really funny, and I thought it like cracked me up, and it was just, and this was a perfect point of like how incredibly talented everyone is around me. So actually, the boy in the film is actually my little brother, and
Okay.
he had never done acting before, and he had done a couple plays, and I was like, listen, I was like, the role, there's just not a lot in it. And I'm like, so I think it would be like from a budget standpoint and everything. And he's very into history, so he could do the accent. So we never practiced and we didn't do anything. And he told me, he goes, Cameron, I got it. Like, I got it. And I trust you, but I'm like, I don't know. Like, and he's like, no, just trust me. So, there's obviously all this money and all this crew and everything, and we're on set. And I go up to direct, and I'm like, so listen. He goes, no, I'm good. And he's like, my brother's like a very like bold little boy. And he goes, no, I'm good. And so we line up for the shot, and I say action, and I'm like, okay, like I don't know, like I'm hoping this isn't going to be a thing. And he turns around and nails the line, and we finish, and I was just like in awe. I was like, Wyatt, I was like, where did that come from? People on set were like, that was great. We're like, well, I guess that was the take. So the wide shot of him, he only was one take. And we were just like, how funny. He's sitting there like, no.
Right.
But it just reminded me of like how, as a director, everyone around you is the uber talented people. And, like as a director, like one thing that I always fear is like, not that I ever question or I think about it, but it's like, in the past, it's a, one person doing it. So I'm always like, oh, is this good or is that good? And just the crew was so talented, and to look around and be like, oh, did you? And someone's already done it. Or like, did this happen? And it's already been done. And it's just like, and Wyatt's story of that was like the ultimate version where like I was nervous like for him. And it just, that kind of stuff was like so much fun to watch in action, and to be able to see like, we had our dolly system that we had was this dolly that I had that was like a cheaper dolly, but we hadn't used it yet, and it looked really great, and everything was going to be good with it. And we get there first day, and it breaks.
Oh,
and
dear.
The rest of the shoot, we were running with a broken dolly. So the entire shoot, it's on a broken dolly, and we were like sandbagging it. But Josh, our DP, is just so talented. Like he just instantly knew how to overcome that, figure it out, fix it, and just get it done. Brianna, who's our makeup artist, I was like, it was the first time I ever used a makeup artist. And again, I was kind of like reluctantly like, well, I want them to look, disheveled, but like, I don't want them to look like gray and like dead. And she's like, I got it. Don't worry. And like, they come out and they just look incredible. And and again, it's just me being like overly anxious, but that was like my favorite thing on set was like turning around and seeing people doing such incredible things and just being like, I'm in good hands. Like, what am I doing here? Like, so I mean, that was just, I mean, Ava and Russell, the lead actors, they were just so funny, and they were such a little like friendship, like budding there. And Ashley, Ava's mom, was just incredible too. And like Ava loves Twizzlers, so we made sure to get Twizzlers on set. So she always had a bag of Twizzlers, and she'd eat them out of like a little paper cup and all that kind of stuff. And she would sing, and it's just the best.
Keep the talent happy, right?
Oh yeah, they were and Russell was just like as cool as a cucumber the whole time, and like he was just so. And the two of them were so like collaborative on the whole thing, where we would talk about the character and we'd say, listen, like, what do you think about this, or what do you think about that? And some of those conversations were so eye-opening. to have somebody who doesn't have the visual image in their mind, but more of the performance image. And, Russell in particular, Ava was very like on and off type of actress where she would just like snap on and be someone else and then snap off and she's back to normal. And it's like, wow. And Russell was like, not method, but he was so much more like in it, where they would talk in their accents in between takes, and you hear about that stuff online and it's like, whoa, this is actually happening. And like, I'm just watching like, wow, yeah. And I'm like, oh, I got so just as a whole, like being on set is such an incredible experience. And it's just like, it's one of my favorite things, but those are just a couple little things I had fun with.
Absolutely. So Jeremiah, actually want to talk about what you've been working on, other than the Rickety Man, of course. Any features, other shorts? Actually, something occurred to me while I was watching the Rickety Man, which is that it feels so much like a proof of concept, kind of something that could be expanded. And you guys brought up that you have this whole binder of like lots of production design and stuff like that.
Yes.
I'm like, that sounds like you're making a feature binder right there, buddy.
Well, no, you would not be wrong. That's actually been sort of it's actually been in the works before I even met Cameron. I wrote the short in 2019, and then later in 2020, I was kind of just like, I was just thinking, because I'd had several people read the short and say, you could probably do like a feature of this, and I sort of poo-pooed it, or I didn't really like think about it much because it's a short, it's self-contained, it is what it is. And then the more I thought about it, I feel like there maybe could be a cool story here. And so I started writing it about 3 months before I met Cameron. So by the time we met and had started talking about producing the short, I had more or less gotten it finished in first draft status, at least. And but I didn't want to show anybody. I didn't want to like reveal it. And I was just still kind of working through some story problems and things like that. So that has been an ongoing thing, but Cameron's since read the script. And so we've had a number of meetings about it. We've talked about kind of where we need to take it in terms of revisions. But that's a super exciting thing, because we're really expanding on the world of the Rickety Man, which has got this really rich mythology and a sense of like timelessness to it. So, we're talking about not just a script that is set in the same time period, but we're talking about other time periods as well. So there's lots of room to grow. And, I don't necessarily want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but yeah, we're certainly working on developing that. We are, also working on a couple of different short projects as well, kind of follow-ups that we can do sort of on a lower budget, but at the same time still kind of exercise the creative freedom that we had on this short, and really kind of, I don't know, I feel like it's really a chance for us to hone the vision that we have, the collective vision that we have as co-creators now, and just like exploring some fun ideas. So yeah, I think that's sort of the big thing on our plate right now is the prep for obviously the short and all the festivals that we're heading to, and then also talking about these other projects that are coming down the line. So we have stuff in the hopper.
Excellent.
Definitely.
Excellent. That's always good. All right. So the design of the Rickety Man is quite fun once you actually see this creature, which you don't see terribly much of actually, but which it's always good, because you want to keep some type of sense in there. But I wanted to ask about how that design came to be and how it was created on set and in post.
Well, I'll let Jeremiah take the front half of that, because that was one thing that again, kind of with this binder of stuff, Jeremiah had come to us with basically a design, and then our job was to more or less, how can we turn that into a practical piece, and then actually talk with effects and get that built. So I'll let Jeremiah kind of start with that.
Yeah, I mean, the very the basic idea that I wanted to convey was a sense of mystery and a sense of never being able to see the entire thing. I wanted it to always be on the periphery of of your vision, and a sense of something lurking there, but then when you look, it's gone. And so it had to be something that was, first of all, very mysterious, and at the same time, I did want it to have a definite form. I didn't want it to be amorphous or like a ghost or anything like that. So it's a physical entity in that sense. and it was always predicated on this deep like woods idea, or this theme of like ancient forests. And this kind of just evolved into this creature that you barely see on screen. But what we talked about in our design discussions was kind of giving it a look that had sort of features that you could recognize, but at the same time are like forest or tree-like, and there's a lot of like spindles and branches and bark, and you know, it had to be mysterious and also terrifying. And so I really just gave them a ton of images that I ran across in my own, you know, searches, and just to kind of get a sense of it. But I didn't have like a pure vision for it. I mostly just wanted them to kind of take my ideas and interpret them however they saw fit. And obviously part of that was, you know, budget concern, because you have to actually make the thing. So and that was really where I kind of handed it off to Cameron and Zach, and they ran with it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, one of the biggest things about the creature design was we wanted to create something that was obviously physically imposing and scary and large, and you know, this big threat. But one of the things that we wanted to really avoid was getting this like bulky, like super muscular kind of feeling thing where it kind of felt like Godzilla or you know, like that kind of a creature where it's like it's fun in those types of movies, but you know, in this type of film that's so you know, terror and suspenseful, we wanted something that felt like it was imposing, but that it could morph and melt. And again, not morph in a sense of the, you know, changing its actual form, but in the sense that it could move and be free, and that it wasn't this bouldering thing that had to walk. Like I just remember picturing, like, I don't want to see it walk. Like that was like the big thing. So it was, how could we create something too that was like sharp, that used the trees, and obviously was again, like, you know, it felt dangerous. It also felt old and broken. And that was Decimated Designs, which did all of the work for us. When we talked to them, the idea at first was, okay, does it need to be a puppet? Can it not be a puppet? And doing some research, we found that making it a puppet was going to be insanely expensive. But we realized that the hand was one of the biggest moving points, really, where the head could kind of be stationary. We could use some CGI to augment some things, which we did. Actually, maybe not even in the version that you saw too. I think we have a little bit extra. But yeah, it was how could we create this feeling of articulation without actually having a ton of movement? So they actually made the whole thing out of foam, and they CNC cut it, did a lot of painting and obviously sculpting and things like that. And again, it just had this like very weathered look. Like that was one of the things that we had talked about. We talked about creatures like the Swamp Thing in that meeting. And we wanted something that wasn't also uniform. One of the things that I really didn't like was the idea of like monsters that had this like very uniform, perfect face, where this thing is so old and it's been around. And, you know, even though it is a creature and it's a monster in a sense, like it's still made of natural elements. So chips and breaks, like we wanted all of those realistic things in there. And we ended up using, I think it's I can't remember the name of the hand. It was the one that like Adam Savage did on Tested, where it has like it's those hands, and it was converted into the Rickety Man hand. You know, we had moss and things like that, but it definitely was a really big challenge because we had an insanely low budget for that. You know, we knew just based on the way the film goes that we would rather, and again, you know, you have to, in a film, you have to take your budget and say, okay, where should we spend more money? And we knew that costumes and set and all that kind of stuff was going to be in so much more of the film. You know, obviously, if we were in a bigger budget situation, you know, making a feature version of this, we would do probably a lot more deeper thought and do with some kind of more interesting stuff. And Decimated Designs, we had talked with them about that idea too, of how can we use this as a jumping point as well. So that was super exciting. But yeah, it was definitely difficult. And then to actually get this thing was insanely difficult. We had to drive to Connecticut from New York, and one of our producers actually had a box truck, and he picked the thing up because and now it's just sitting actually in my garage. So my garage out there is a giant version of a Rickety Man in my house. Actually, I don't know. I just moved, and I don't have the claw hand, but I had the claw hand like sitting on my like dresser for the longest time, just kind of hanging out there. So it's very fun to have, and we might see more of it. So,
real quick, one thing that I think sort of I feel like we actually took advantage of the fact that we knew that we couldn't spend a ton of money, and we knew we also didn't want to show a ton of the creature. We wanted it to be mysterious, and so we kind of used that to our advantage. And the way that you shot it, obviously, kind of carries that through, because you really only see a little bit of the head, you see the hand, and the rest is kind of like implied. It's all like in your imagination. And I think that's one of the great things, going back to this idea of Gothic horror and what lurks beyond the vision, right? And it's like everything that's in your head is way more scary than what you see on screen.
Right.
Like, you see it on screen and
Totally.
it's terrifying for a second, but then it's like, okay, the thrill is gone. But if you don't see it, and you keep wondering when you're going to see it, and you keep thinking, what does it look like, or what is it going to do? That's so much more powerful, and it can take you much further. And I feel like that really, we kind of, in fact, I even said, like, I don't want to see a lot of this thing. It needs to be hidden, because it's
such a psychological horror
Yeah.
too. Like, the whole script itself is like it's so much on the family and that dynamic, where it's like, we didn't want this thing to take away from that. Where how not great would it be if you're watching this movie that's so dramatic, and there's these family relationships, and there's this real like tension and suspense, and then all of a sudden at the end there's this like crazy weird looking monster. And and the whole time we were saying, and I guess I'll say this kind of without spoiling anything, but the Rickety Man is not 110%. Although the Rickety Man is the villain, it's not the only villain.
Right.
And I would even argue it's maybe not the villain. It's the influence of the villain.
Right. It's kind of
so I think that was the other thing too, is we kept remembering, like, let's remember, this isn't our only scary piece. It's the dread and the story that's scary. And that's where the other thing, again, coming to those creature conversations, were, okay, well, again, being efficient with our budget, well, we know we can't do that, so let's put our time and effort into the other scary things, and then just make sure that those do hit the mark, and what we see is as good as we can get.
Was there eventually like somebody in like a big suit or something like that in there,
No.
or was it just like a there? So
yeah, so I'll say, we had Zach, our producer.
okay.
He was like all over the place on everything, but he actually was the hand in most of the shots.
Nice. Okay.
And then in I think in the final shot, we actually just had it on stands because it was so big. But we ended up, Zach also does a lot of like CGI work, and he actually went in and did like, which I don't think it was on the link that you got to see just yet, but we did like a pass on it where we basically just animated some of it to move a little bit. And it's so quick too. Because to have like a puppeteered suit and everything was like so much more money. And the other thing was, it was so many more failure points.
Right.
So yeah.
So I like to end these interviews with a very simple question, which is, if you would recommend one horror film off the top of your head, don't even think about it, to the audience, what would it be? Just go. Anything.
Saint Maud. That's gonna be my
that was
recommendation.
great. I loved that. The people in my theater were not happy with the last shot of that movie.
Yeah.
Bam.
Yeah. I'm gonna say The Awakening.
Okay.
I feel like, first of all, it's apropos because it is another kind of gothic-y horror set in England. And I feel like, I don't know, anyone who's into gothic horror, they're going to like it. It's got a lot of cool resonant themes. And similar to Saint Maud, actually, it's sort of about a little bit of madness and a little bit of like, there's a sense of underlying, like, is this person crazy? Is this person like, what's going on here? So yeah, there's some fun stuff there, but yeah, obviously there's way too many to name, but
there's so we can go another 20 minutes. I know. I was like, what? I feel like Saint Maud was one recently I saw that I was like, whoa, this is.
I agree.
I mean, any of those, like, I'm a huge A24 fan.
A24.
I'll say it. They just, every single time they come out with a movie and you don't think they can top it, and they're always like absurd, but they're terrifying, and they're so like well emotionally done too. And I mean, that was a huge factor for us too in going into the Rickety Man. That was one thing we talked about, is we wanted it to feel very A24. But so if people haven't seen Saint Maud,
that's definitely worth seeing. Yeah, that's a great film. Absolutely. All right. So before we wrap up, where can people find you? Social media, anything like that, Twitter or so?
Yeah, well, I'm on Twitter at Fringe Blog. I'm also on Instagram, Jeremiah in Providence, and I'm on LinkedIn. But does anyone use LinkedIn?
Yeah, right.
People have suits on LinkedIn.
Excuse me, I bet many people on LinkedIn.
I need to get better at
on
using
LinkedIn.
it, but yeah, right now I'm in the I don't use it enough, and so I'm just gonna kind of make fun of it.
I'm on Twitter, visuals_black, and then I'm also on Instagram, Cameron96G. But you can also check out the Rickety Man too. TheRicketyMan.com is a great way to see. I would say the RicketyMan.com is like the hub if you want to see when the film is playing, if you want to see the cast and everything. We have some behind the scenes photos. We have pretty much everything on there. We'll have a press release and stuff on there too, and some other stuff like that. So yeah, that's probably the best way to learn more about the film. Although Jeremiah, there's a Twitter too, right?
There is a Twitter. It's just at the Rickety Man. So pretty easy.
Yep, pretty self-explanatory.
We're
All
all over the place.
Well, my name's been Stephen Tronichek, and you can find me on Twitter at STRONICEK. And I've been with HorrOrigins.com. HorrOrigins is a website where you can find articles, reviews, and interviews. We also run our very own film festival and screenplay competition. This has been Jeremiah Lewis and Cameron Gallagher. Thanks for, coming and answering questions, just chatting about it. And
thanks so much for having us. It's been
a
real pleasure.
Yeah.
It's been awesome. Thank you.
All right.